This is the most important part in my view. This is the most important part. Is it possible that we just got a big clue, a big sign about his defense, and if he will really be found not guilty of murder in the eyes of everyone? Rob Reiner and Michele Singer's 36-year marriage looked impossible to break. It was the kind of love people pointed at and said quietly, "That's the real thing." Every red carpet picture, every happy interview, every perfect moment showed the same thing. Calm, strong, and looking perfect. But perfect isn't always true. And sometimes quiet doesn't mean everything is okay. Behind those big smiles, pressure was growing, slow and silent. For years, something deep and heavy was always there just under the surface. Long before the cameras stopped, their home wasn't the happy place people thought. There were tense nights, lots of walking back and forth, and endless worries about their son Nick's problems. The fights stayed behind closed doors. The fears were hidden under layers of secrets, and the marriage quietly got strained under a weight no one else could see. The love never really went away, but it got tested over and over until it hardly had any strength left to hold on. Rob later said they didn't stay together because it was easy. Not at all. They stayed because leaving would have broken the little bit their family still had. Their kids became what kept them going. The only reason they kept trying when everything felt like too much. And we just found out, by the way, that Reiner might actually think he's the victim of a big plot against him. That love slowly turned into just hanging on. And that hanging on became how they got through another day. So when CBS filmed Rob Reiner's last interview, everyone could feel something. Something about him seemed totally different, almost like all the years of weight were finally hitting him. The confident. But the second Michele came to the set to visit her friend Barry Sonnenfeld, something exciting happened. Rob remembered Barry joking, "You're not going to marry Michelle Pfeiffer. You're going to marry my friend Michele Singer." And believe it or not, Barry was right. Before Michele, Rob said he felt empty inside. Successful, yes, but missing something real. When I met Michele, he said, "I finally knew what love really feels like." That one spark didn't just change his life, it changed the movie too. Rob went back and rewrote the ending, turning sad into hope, letting Harry and Sally get back together on New Year's Eve. Just a few months later, Rob and Michele got married in Hawaii in a small last-minute wedding so private that only two strangers were there to watch. "We weren't just married," Rob said proudly. "We were partners." Michele kept him steady, gave him balance, and made him feel whole in a way fame never could. But even in their most perfect-looking times, there were small cracks starting underneath. Quiet ones no one saw, not even them. Rob laughed a little as he talked about raising their 3 kids. His face lit up for a second. He said he was the soft parent, the one who couldn't say no to spoiling them, while Michele was the one who kept rules and made everything run smooth. That mix, his kindness and her order, kept their home steady for years, even when things outside got messy. It is a brutal, brutal crime. And Nick Reiner faces these murder charges with special circumstances. Michele wasn't just his wife. She was his anchor, the one who kept him steady when everything else felt crazy. "Without Michele," Rob said, "I don't know who I would have become." His voice changed when he talked about being a dad. His voice got quiet, almost shaking despite all his Hollywood success. Nothing compared to the first time he held each of his kids. He said, "I saw a stranger wearing my son's face." Those words hit everyone hard, heavy, real, and raw. When asked why he never called for help, Rob lowered his head and whispered, "Because I'm a father." He was scared that one call could ruin Nick's future forever, that news would twist it all, that the world would put a bad label on his son. But under that fear, there was something even harder to face. The truth that sometimes love alone, no matter how deep or strong, just isn't enough to bring someone back when they've already started to slip away. There were nights when everything fell apart behind closed doors. Nick would storm out angry, leaving the house a mess. Doors slammed, tension thick, and when it got quiet again, that silence felt louder than the yelling. "The hardest part wasn't the mess," Rob said quietly. "It was opening the door again, hoping again, believing again that maybe this time would be different." When Nick came back asking for more money, Rob said he already knew inside what was going on. He was being used. "But if I said no," Rob said softly, "I was scared I'd lose him forever." He called it betrayal happening slowly. "Our son betrayed us," Rob said. But we betrayed ourselves too, because we didn't have the strength to say stop. Fear took over rules. Ignoring took over doing something, and silence became a kind of jail that kept them all trapped. Still, through everything, Rob never stopped loving Nick, not even when it hurt. I still saw the little boy who needed me, he whispered. That love became both his comfort and his problem, a light that guided him, but also something that held him stuck. The more they tried to protect their kid, the more the family started to break apart. The laughter faded. After his first court date was delayed, it was moved to January 7th this week. But instead of a normal court date, right? Where someone is told the charges, Michele stood there shaking, not just angry, but heartbroken from years of building pain. Her hands shook as she grabbed the phone. I'm calling the police, she said, her voice strong but broken. Rob stepped in front right away, his voice cracking. Don't, please, he's our son. The tension in the room was too much. And this time, his attorney, well, now former attorney, famous criminal defense lawyer Alan Jackson, withdrew from representing him. That was a huge shock announcement. Michele broke down, not from fear, but from total tiredness. Through tears, she whispered, You're choosing him and leaving me behind. The room went totally silent, heavy, stuck in pain. Rob couldn't deny it. I love you, he whispered, but I love our child too. I don't know how to keep from losing both of you. That night almost ended everything. Divorce was finally said out loud. Bags came out, then went back when feelings calmed just enough to stop. Rob later said it was the first time he really thought their family might not make it. Not because love was gone, but because it was pulling them in two ways. We didn't fight over fame or money, Rob said. We fought over the children we loved more than anything. Michele wanted responsibility. She needed rules, honesty, truth. Rob wanted to protect his son no matter the cost. I couldn't stand thinking of him in handcuffs, he said painfully. Michele's answer hurt deep, and I can't live in fear anymore. Both were right, and that's what made it impossible. Rob chose quiet over fights, hoping it would hold the family together somehow. Maybe, he said quietly. I was just making the pain last longer instead of ending it. Those fights didn't break them all at once. They wore them down slowly, like drops building pressure so quiet you don't notice until it's too late. And to the outside world, none of it showed. The perfect picture stayed the same. The picture of the perfect Hollywood family stayed for the world to see. But behind those doors, love was tested in ways no one could imagine. She didn't ask, she demanded it. A house right next door, private, nice, comfortable. Michele was angry. Are we helping her or hurting her? She asked sharply. Rob had no good answer, just guilt heavy in his chest. In the end, he gave in again. I couldn't stand my daughter being unhappy, he said. Jake stayed stuck, too, in the same cycle of comfort and depending on them, never finding his own way. The house itself changed. It got quieter, nicer looking, but somehow emptier. We'd sit at dinner and no one would talk, Rob said. I'd look at my kids and wonder, do they even want their own lives? But what really broke him wasn't the quiet or the depending. It was the look in Michele's eyes. She never yelled or threw words like weapons. Instead, she whispered one night, We're running out. Rob never asked if she meant money or hope. Deep down, he knew. He said he chose giving over teaching, pleasing over being a parent. I was so scared of losing my children, Rob said quietly. But in the end, I lost myself. Every ask, every giving in took a piece of him, and still he couldn't stop. His love had become a trap he walked into on purpose. When the interviewer asked if he had any regrets, Rob went completely quiet. Then he nodded slowly. I regret thinking I had time, he said. Families don't fall apart from one big thing. They fall apart from thousands of small things we ignore. And for the first time in the whole interview, he looked right into the camera. His eyes were tired, but clear, his voice low and shaking like he was talking straight to Michele. One last message only she would get. If you're watching, Rob said softly, his voice barely steady. I understand now. I just understood. Too late. The whole studio froze. No sound. No camera noises. No moving chairs. No quiet directions, just silence. And that silence said more than any music ever could. When the interview ended, no one in the room knew they had just filmed what would be Rob Reiner's last time on screen. Later, CBS showed the full talk again as a tribute. No cuts, no extra voice, no fancy stuff, just Rob sitting under the cold lights, looking fragile but totally real. His honesty felt different. It wasn't acting, it was truth. Nick Reiner is not guilty, not that he didn't do it, not that he didn't kill Rob and Michele, not that he's innocent, right? Not that someone else did it. Near the end, the network showed a behind-the-scenes moment that wasn't meant to air. Rob turned to the interviewer and asked quietly, "Do you think my family will be happy?" The man paused before saying, "Happiness will come." Rob nodded slowly, closing his eyes like he was finally putting down a weight he'd carried for years. When that special aired, people didn't watch for gossip or drama. They watched in shock. Viewers were stunned. Rob and Michele Reiner had always been seen as Hollywood's perfect couple. Smart, real, loving. Seeing the raw truth behind the smiles shook millions. Many said they couldn't watch it all at once. Not because it was shocking, but because it was real. Rob didn't sound like a star. He sounded like a dad facing himself, struggling with what he did and didn't do. That's what made it so hard to forget. It wasn't about fame. It was about family. Sometimes heartbreak doesn't come from outside. Sometimes it grows quietly inside the walls we trust most. The media called it a last confession, but to those who watched carefully, it felt more like a goodbye, one that still rang long after the screen went black. It felt like a quiet call for help, one that came way too late. Then came the 14th, barely a month after that sad interview. And everything completely fell apart. And the news spread fast through Hollywood and everywhere else. The same family everyone thought had found peace was suddenly gone. Rob and Michele were found inside their own home. And the shock spread across the country in minutes. But what shocked people more was what came next. Their son Nick, the child Rob spent his whole life protecting, was named as the one who did it. Every fear Rob carried quietly, every painful what if he tried to ignore all came true in the worst way. The silence he chose out of love became the thing that broke everything he tried to hold together. The words from that last interview echoed everywhere. I was afraid of losing my child. When CBS played that part again, people couldn't stop watching. Every sentence sounded different now, not just thinking back, but like a goodbye. A message Rob didn't know would be his last warning. If there were still time, he had said, and those words hit people hard, because the truth was, time had been there. No one faced it. No one wanted to. In a second, the perfect picture everyone loved broke completely. That once happy family photo became something else. Sad, heartbreaking, impossible to forget. People started asking how many other homes look like that, smiling for cameras, acting fine while quietly falling apart inside. And maybe the scariest part wasn't the ending. And now we're not going to know the reason he withdrew, but we know that he's now got a public defender. It was seeing how long the cracks had been there, hidden right in front of everyone. Years where love, fear, and ignoring twisted together so tight, nothing could pull them apart. Rob's love for his son was total, completely total. But that same love blinded him, trapped him, and in the end took away everything he tried so hard to protect. What started as a family story became bigger than a news headline. It became a warning, a tough lesson about what happens when love has no limits, and silence takes over action. But to really get how heavy it all is, you have to look at Michele, the woman who stood quietly but strongly in the middle of that family. Michele Singer Reiner wasn't just Rob's wife. She was her own strong person, a respected photographer, producer, and activist with a life just as interesting as her husband's. Born in New York City, Michele grew up in a close Jewish family built on surviving hard times, bouncing back, and the strong will to start over. Her mom went through terrible things in World War II and rebuilt her life from nothing. That strength became the base of Michelle's whole spirit. From young, she learned silence can be dangerous, and truth isn't just an option. It was something you had to do. She carried that energy into everything. She spoke French and Spanish well, studied photography at the School of Visual Arts in New York, where being creative became her way to say things without words. Those early years weren't fancy. They were hard and humble. She carried heavy gear, fixed lights for others, watched people take credit for her ideas. But behind the camera, she learned to really see people. Not the outside they showed, but the real person inside. Her camera became her voice, her tool, her truth. By the mid-1980s, her real talent couldn't be ignored. Big magazines started calling. They loved how she caught not just looks, but honesty. Faces without pretending, feelings without hiding, moments that felt alive. Michele Singer Reiner wasn't after fame, she was after truth. And that truth made her stay in people's minds. She later took the cover photo for The Art of the Deal. So, and remember, he allegedly kills his parents, so he's not getting an inheritance. But it always became a question of how can you afford a high-powered attorney like Alan Jackson? But this is the big point. This goes to my other major theory. A project she said later she wished she hadn't done, but it still made her name known in the business. It showed she could stand with the biggest names. Then in 1989, everything changed fast. While visiting her friend Barry Sonnenfeld on the set of When Harry Met Sally, Michele met director Rob Reiner. And in that moment, everything was different. Rob, single again and quietly fixing his life, saw her across the set and couldn't stop looking. Barry, always joking, teased, "You're not going to marry Michelle Pfeiffer. You're going to marry my friend Michele Singer." And unbelievably, he was right. Their connection happened fast and strong. Something that felt right. Within months, Rob and Michele said, "I do" in Hawaii in a small, quick wedding with only 2 strangers watching. One, an old woman, even knew Rob and happily said something nice about the princess bride. A moment so simple but perfect for their love. Quick, warm, real. Michele didn't just come into Rob's life. She changed its path completely. Her steady ways, creative energy, and deep feelings reshaped even his movies. In fact, When Harry Met Sally first had a sad ending, but after falling for Michele, Rob changed it, letting Harry and Sally find each other again. Hope took over sadness, both in the movie and in Rob's heart. For the next 36 years, Rob and Michele were one of Hollywood's most loved couples. Not just married, but real partners and equals. They built a life full of creativity, caring, and working together. They raised 3 kids, Jake in 1991, Nick in 1993, and Rami in 1997, making what the world saw as a perfect family, even as hidden problems waited. Behind everything, Michele was the steady one, the quiet strength that kept Roe Hudson. Be real and focused no matter how crazy Hollywood got. Rob often said she was the power behind everything they made, and her own work showed it. Michele co-started Reiner Light, then took a big job as co-chair of Castle Rock Entertainment, helping make great projects like Shock and Awe. Maybe he can't afford the experts that he needs to testify in his trial. So, this goes to my point. When Alan Jackson says that Nick Reiner is not guilty, right? Not that he didn't do it, not that he's innocent, not that somebody else did it, not guilty. My thought is he's talking about the insanity defense. Albert Brooks defending My Life, Rachel and God and Country. She even kept working on Spinal Tap 2, coming out in 2025, showing she never slowed her creative side. By 2020, Michele and Rob signed a big deal with Warner Brothers Television, proving they were strong storytellers with real purpose. But Michele wasn't just creative. She fought for fairness, equality, and truth. She co-started the American Foundation for Equal Rights, helping end Proposition 8 and push for marriage equality everywhere. Her passion kept going. She worked for early kid education, better funding for public schools, and helped the Innocence Project fix wrong convictions when she saw unfairness. Every cause she touched, she gave everything. No easy ways, no half effort. Michele showed up all the way every time, Rob said proudly. She's the power behind everything we do. He often called her his true guide, the one who kept him steady when fame tried to pull him away. When I met her, Rob once said, I finally understood what real love feels like. Years later, Michele said the same thing in her own way, her voice soft but sure, showing a woman who lived with purpose, loved strong, and never forgot what mattered. It just felt right, Michele once said. We fell in love instantly. Well, friends called her smart, caring, and unstoppable, a woman with both fire and kindness. She balanced art with doing right, creativity with purpose, and always stood for more than herself. Together, Rob and Michele built a partnership not based on fame or looks, but on real meaning and shared goals. From outside, their bond looked unbreakable, the kind of love people dream of. Then came December 14th, 2025, and everything stopped. Their story froze in a way no one imagined. They are reporting that their sources tell them Nick Reiner may, in fact, know that he killed his parents, but that he's delusional, that he believes that this was some sort of conspiracy that has been orchestrated against him to have him arrested. Michele and Rob were found inside their Brentwood home, and the shock hit Hollywood and the whole country like a big wave of not believing. Soon after, their son Nick was taken into custody for what happened, and the quiet that followed was heavy, deep, and very upsetting. When CBS showed Rob's last interview again, it felt totally different. Viewers didn't see a movie maker or Hollywood star anymore. They saw a dad who spent his life trying to keep his family together, even as it slipped away quietly. Every line he said now felt heavier, almost like he knew what was coming. What sounded like thinking back now felt like a message he left, one that cut right through the screen. Rob's words weren't big drama. They were painfully real, painfully human. His story wasn't to shock people. It was to open eyes, to remind everyone of something hard but true. That behind perfect smiles and nice photos, many families fight private battles no one sees. He showed that love without limits and silence without truth can quietly become the thing that breaks what it's trying to save. Rob didn't share his pain for attention. He did it because he couldn't let silence win a Neimer, even if he understood too late. He wanted the truth seen, and that truth stayed with everyone who watched, ringing long after the screen went dark. In the weeks after, the world couldn't stop talking about the Reiners. News shows looked at every second of Rob's last interview, every photo of the couple, every small hint that might show what was coming. Fans filled social media with memories, old talks, and clips, trying to understand how a family so steady could fall apart so fast. But away from the big news, there was something quieter, a wave of thinking. People started looking at their own families, their own quiet times, their own hidden fears. Therapists said more parents asked for help. More families tried to get close again before things went too far. Rob's story became something bigger, a mirror showing how love, when not talked about, can turn into loneliness, and how protecting too much can quietly break trust. Friends who knew the Reiners said the hardest part wasn't the shock. It was seeing how hidden the cracks were. They were always there for others, one close friend said, but no one saw how much they needed someone for them. Michele's work friends put together a tribute show of her photos, a beautiful collection called Unspoken Light. Each picture caught what she always chased, truth, feeling, and beauty hidden in pain. Visitors walked through quietly, some leaving notes, others standing in front of her pictures with tears. It wasn't just art, it was a message she sent her whole life. That truth, no matter how heavy, has to be faced. CBS later said Rob's full, uncut interview would stay saved in their vault, never changed. He wanted honesty, the producer said, and honesty is what we owe him. As time went on, the world started seeing the Reiners not just as a family that broke, but as a reminder that even the strongest love needs limit. It's That silence can be louder than yelling, and that sometimes the bravest thing is speaking even when it's too late. And somewhere in that truth, Rob and Michelle's story still lives, not as just sad, but as a lesson whispered through time, asking everyone to listen before silence takes over again. Months passed, but the talk never really stopped. Every time someone said Rob Reiner's name, there was a quiet moment, a mix of sadness and respect. Hollywood kept going like always, but the weight of what happened stayed like a shadow that wouldn't go away. People weren't just sad for the Reiners. They were questioning why we love perfect images while ignoring real pain. Writers, directors, even actors who worked with Rob started speaking up. Some called it the Reiner effect, a reminder that stories on screen mean nothing if we can't face the ones in our homes. Rob always believed in stories with purpose. And now, without meaning to, his own life became that story, the one that hit too close to real. Michelle's work kept starting talks too. Her unfinished projects came out one by one, each full of raw feeling and honesty that made people stop and think. Her last photo series, found in her private studio, was called Through Silence. Every picture told a story of strength, love, and the hidden pressure people carry inside. Critics called it sad and beautiful, the truest picture of Michelle's heart. Nick's case stayed under review, and though details were private, what little came out showed a young man lost between guilt and confusion. For the first time, the news held back. No mean headlines, no wild stories. Instead, the story became softer, sadder, about cycles, pain, and how quiet love can twist into something that hurts everyone. In time, the Reiners' Brentwood home sold quietly. Neighbors said the lights stayed off for months, except one night when a single lamp was on in the window. Maybe a house showing, or maybe someone saying goodbye. Whatever it was, it felt like a symbol, a small light left in a place that held so much life. And even now, people go back to that last interview, playing Rob's words, looking for something they missed. Each time, the message is the same. Love is strong, but truth is what keeps it safe. Because silence may feel safe right then, but truth is what keeps love going. By the next year, the Reiner story became bigger than any Hollywood tale. It became a symbol, something to start talks, a quiet reminder of how fragile even strong bonds can be. Schools started classes on the Reiner legacy, looking at how fame, family, and not talking about feelings mix in ways that affect generations. Psychologists, artists, journalists all said this wasn't just sad. It was a lesson about what happens when caring gets replaced by image. Documentaries came, but none caught what Rob and Michele really stood for, being real. They showed that even people who seem to have it all can fight hidden battles. One filmmaker called their story a picture of love meeting real life. Another called it the cost of protecting what you love too much. Every way people saw it led back to the same truth. Their story was very human. Michelle's photo shows kept traveling city to city, New York, London, Paris, each one bringing thousands of people. Her photography became timeless, stronger than ever. A photo of Rob on set behind the camera, smiling at her lens, became the main piece, the moment that reminded everyone how close they were. Under the frame, a small note read, "He believed in me before I believed in myself." That one line made people cry. Jake and Rami, now living quietly away from cameras, started rebuilding with help from friends and people who knew their parents. Those close said they found comfort in keeping their parents' values, honesty, caring, creativity, not as something from the past, but as a way to honor the good parts. In talks, family friends often said the same, that Rob and Michelle's story wasn't about losing, but about learning. Learning that love without talking can't last, that silence is never safe, and that the bravest thing is speaking before it's too late. And maybe that's how their memory lives on, not through movies or awards, but through the quiet understanding they left. That real love isn't about being perfect. It's about truth, even when that truth hurts. What a story, raw, emotional, and unforgettable. The Reiner's journey wasn't just about fame or heartbreak. It was about truth, love, and the cost of silence. Their memory reminds us that even the brightest lives can have the darkest struggles, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply speak up. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about what really happens behind closed doors, don't let it stop here. Hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe so you never miss the next deep dive, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you believe silence can destroy even the strongest love? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because your voice matters here. This isn't just a story. It's a conversation about real life, real love, and the truths we all try to hide. So keep the dialogue going. And remember, every family has a story.